signal or moment right before you hit that button when you ramp it up to 100% traffic. Yes, that particular moment, you know that product of yours is going to get out of the door, out of your home, out of your shop, out of your factory, out of your office space, out into the world, and it's gonna, once it's out, it's out. You know, it's gonna go places, it's gonna see people, it's gonna, you know, interact. There's gonna be a lot of things that are gonna be out of your control at that point. And so, it's a little bit like, who here has a child? Okay, we have a few people. So, you know that moment when your child leaves the safe haven, guarded, fitted space of the home, out, they leave the door, you know, they're out of the door, and now is the first day in daycare, in preschool, in school, and you know, they go out there and they interact with the world, hopefully not getting into trouble and you know, doing great things, right? But all we can do on our side is really harness them with the values, the skills, the tools to be successful. And we want them not just to survive, right? Survive is walking and breathing. That's table stakes, that's baseline. You know, it's given, it's boring. We want them to thrive. We want them to, we have ambitious goals for our you know, little bundles. We want them to have many friends. We want them to do great things. We want them to have an impact in the world. We have high aspirations for them, right? And our product is a little bit like that, isn't it? There's some similarities there. So, you know, when we launch the product, well, even if you launch it in English only, right? You do upfront. A lot of companies upfront do they establish the product proposition. They do the comparable, the landscape, the market landscape, the competitive comparable cost, and all of that. You know, you do user research, you do A/B testing, and formalize the prototype of your product with you know, qualitative, quantitative user research, A/B testing. But typically that is done for US market, right? A lot of companies say, okay, well, we're gonna nail it for US market, we'll figure it out first, and then we'll see about global, right? But if you think about it, you know, in this case, US market, I allegorize it to the home, you know, the safe safety of the familiar, the fitted. You're building a product for US market, it's fitted for US market, right? Then when you want it to scale, it's not going to necessarily be relevant and fitted for other markets, right? So, how can we harness the product up front, you know, when we really build that product strategy, that vision of what the purpose would be? And again, the values are the product purpose, the value proposition of your product. The tools in this case are the platform infrastructure, the devices. You know, you're gonna have a vision up front about mobilize. You know, is it going to be mobile? What is your mobile web strategy, your native app, your desktop, and so on? What is the platform infrastructure? What are the other systems you're going to avail for the product? So in that case, tools would be the tools we would give to our child. You know, would be the channels by which our product would communicate with an interface with the world, with the users, and of course the skills. You know, the skills that we would give our child to thrive and do great things in the world is equitable to the features that we would build and you know, conceive for our product performance. When you think about it from global from get-go, upfront, you think about all of these factors and considerations in a holistic way. Be ambitious. You know, think about, don't just build a product for Tommy from Mountain View, right? Think about Ganesh in India. Think about, you know, Alma in Tel Aviv, you know, Ganesh in Delhi, or Peter in Berlin, or, you know, again, once your product is out the door, it's gonna go places and see people. It's gonna be seen by people, even if it's English only. It's gonna see people. This is a digital world. It's gonna see people and interface with people in different ecosystems, different countries, all over the world, right? So what would their impression be of your product? Will they even discover your product? Will they love it, right? Will it be relevant and valuable for them? So this is what I'll be talking about today, and I'll start with, sort of more higher level, and then I'll dig a bit deeper, dive into some case study examples and some learnings and results from A/B tests I had run in the past, and still do in the future, in the present, and then I'll open it up for questions. But this is very casual, so just you and I. So feel free also throughout the session to intercept with comments, with feedback or questions. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So. So really, it's about product, people, and places, right? So when you start incepting from the inception, when you start conceiving of your product and start building the prototypes and doing the market and the user research to firm up the value of the product and its purpose and its performance, think about it from a global scale, right? So what is that vision? What does it look like, right? So who are you going to optimize for, right? What is the age cohort? What is the user type? You might want to do international first. Sometimes you might want to actually start with a lightweight off-stack mobile app in a mobile first region, right? Many companies do that actually. In Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea are very much mobile first countries. US is not, right? So you might want to actually test your market with that. The people, who are you going to optimize for? The places, from the outset, consider what would be your target markets, target priority markets, right? So of course, you might think already, hey, I'm just a startup, lean and mean, I have a lot of cost-benefit considerations and trade-offs to do. Clearly, you're not necessarily going to wrap it up, to open it up for international markets or for multilingual from the beginning, but just to have that conscientious thought process around, think big around what is the global product strategy for your product so that you're preparing it to scale to global, to international when you are ready. Having that in place up front, and as much as possible actually building a platform infra that is modular enough, because a lot of times what happens, it's much quicker and cheaper, of course, to build, to develop a platform infra that is English only, that is English US only. You can iterate faster, but then when you do want to scale, you have to freeze the code, go back, refactor the code, reposition your value proposition, rethink your addressable segment for remainder headroom growth, re-examine all of that, and really go back and take a huge hit in terms of money and cost and time to address all these things. And this is why the impression is always that international, that's such a huge pain, and it is a huge pain. It's a huge pain if it's an afterthought. But it's really not. Yes, it takes more time and more effort up front to a level that you feel that is relevant for your product. But then you have an open artery to actually scale global from the get-go, from the upfront. So I would say global product strategy. You definitely want to have a global product strategy. Again, if your product is relevant for customers outside of US at some point in time. But that is, what is global product strategy? It's really local product strategy on a global scale, right? So you win a market, you win another market, you win another market. You are optimizing for that target market where your, addressable segment is, and you scale from there. But you have to be local. You have to be present in the market. Not physically present necessarily, but you have to win that market in terms of the ecosystem, in terms of the value that you can offer there. And so that's really the, in a nutshell, be local, win global. That's really the message. So user first versus US first, right? From a user perspective, again, it's a digital world. Customers all over the world, will see your product. Think about it again. Have an upfront thought about and take thoughtful decisions, right? About whether you care about whether a user, a customer, will actually discover your product, right? Through branded or non-branded search, through maybe a API through another portal or another platform from that country that is a segue, that is an entry point to your product. Will it be discovered? Will the local search engine actually surface, index your page, and actually rank it on the first page of search results versus the third page at the bottom, right? Will you get traffic from that page? And then once it is discovered, is it going to, if it's a mobile first region and in Japan over 60% will interface with your product on mobile web, and over 90%, 95% on native app. So what does that look like in terms of page load? Right, when any user, customer, interfaces with your product on mobile, are you completely dropping them off right there up front, or even are you considering and download the app in your onboarding welcome flow, right? Which a lot of companies don't, because again they've designed and build, they've designed their product for US, where download the app during onboarding is not the top priority. But then, when customers in mobile-first regions interface with your product, they might sign up on desktop, but they're never going to show up, right? And you've already eliminated such a huge potential of growth up front without doing, without having to invest beyond just, a very sort of a product marketing ad campaign, or not ad campaign, a campaign of download the app or splash promo. So once they discover it, can they use it? Is it workable for them? Does search work? Does, this is more advanced, but does personalization, relevancy algorithms for matches, does that work for them, right? So does the product actually perform and work? And do they care? As a user, do I care about you, about your product? Do I care? Do I love it? Am I going to have are you going to have retention from me? Am I going to, you're going to allow brand bond with your product? So, from the product perspective, from your perspective as the owner of the product, make it work without make it discovered, make it functional, make it relevant. So again, having an upfront, conscientious thought process around what is that value proposition, and have it wide enough so that you are not dropping off potential customers and anywhere they may be, right? Or that you will be able to iterate and adapt and reposition your value prop at a later phase when you do want to scale and invest more in scaling, right? So make it relevant and make it loved, right? Make it loved really is that silver, those few companies that actually, those P&G, the Apples, the companies that actually have the 70-30 revenue generation split, 70 coming from international and 30 from domestic US, are those who are actually building that brand bond, building that sustainable relationship with customers everywhere, globally. Because typically for companies who localize, who do language support and go out there, typically the mainstream is what you see is 60-40. So 60% of the revenue is generated from US market in fact, and then only 40% from international. And again, that creates a misconception that, hey, the money, the monetization opportunities in the US, let's MVP, let's prioritize US first. But really it's a cycle, right? Because yes, it's 60-40, but that's because you're not optimizing for an international market. You're not having the right payment methods, right? Or many other things, that are not as relevant or as functional. They don't know about you. It's not relevant for them, or it's not loved by them enough to get that reverse 60-40 revenue split. So these are the three common misconceptions that I've mentioned. So, the concept that a product, one size fits all. Okay, we're building a product. Again, usually it's, many times it's built for US-centric, because the learnings that are applied for building and developing and all the prototypes and the research that's done, that's put into before you actually hit that 100% traffic ramp, are done typically in English US. And so your product is typically English US, but then you expect it to perform everywhere, right? And the assumption is that once you translate it, if the interface is then translated, then other countries, customers in other countries can get it, can understand it. But that's not necessarily how it works, right? Because your product in its inception is not necessarily ready or relevant for international. So it's not one size fits all. And again, MVP core, core English US, because that's where the money is. I'll give a couple of examples soon, but it's not always the case. So it's often not the case. But then there are certain factors. What can you do to change that? And then of course in the mobile space, if you're primarily mobile, or if mobile is a big thing in your product, then think about mobile first regions, geos, right? Because that might be a better attraction for you to get going at the beginning. So let's do a little trivia. Guess, or maybe today, who is the number one today? Which country is the number one?
China.
What?
China.
China for data? It's not China.
India.
That's right. So data in terms of broadband, in terms of data usage. But the amazing fact about that is that just last year in 2016, India was in the 150th place in the world for mobile data usage. And it jumped to the first place just this year in 2017. Isn't that amazing? Right? Yes, there are many different reasons. There are several reasons for that. But just think about it. It's not. US is not the center of the universe, as it used to be, perhaps. And so think about what is relevant for your product. What does your product know to do, and where should it go? Prioritize your target markets accordingly. For example, Japan is first for mobile app downloads. Guess how many, on average, a Japanese user has? How many apps are downloaded on a typical native Japanese phone on average? How much? 56? That's very specific. 100 on average, 100. In terms of site speed, or in terms of broadband speed, which is the top number one country in the world? Which one? Singapore. Which? Germany. What? South Korea. That's right. Right. So there are many firsts in the world, right? So this is a very interesting example. So WhatsApp, WhatsApp, of course, is homegrown, right? It's just back here in Silicon Valley. Their number one market in terms of growth is
India.
India, right? So over 200 million monthly active users in India, and the reason is, and of course, they have their market share globally is great. I mean, it's almost 56% of global penetration, right? But India is their fastest growing market, and the reason is that and again, for India, you can in many cases actually just do English only and still win market adoption. But they repositioned, they understood the market, they understood the market gap, and it's really critical, those top percentile companies that are really sustainable and strong in the global marketplace, the winners, okay? These are companies who are able to not just identify the current market gaps, but also predict what those market gaps will be and iterate for that fast enough and early enough to win that, right? So WhatsApp, identified that, and India actually WhatsApp is primarily used, really that's sort of the edge point for WhatsApp is used to communicate nature disasters, communicating our emergency messaging. And what's really critical about their strategy is that they knew to very early on engage with the local government related to, again, tuning to local current trends and current gaps. Digital India. Digital India is a big government initiative, very strong, started last year, very strong this year, and so they were able to tap to that, right? And we did similar things at LinkedIn where we partnered in Saudi and UAE for economic opportunities. For LinkedIn, it's creating economic opportunities, matching talent seekers with job seekers. Those governments in those countries prioritize that for their region, and so LinkedIn was able to then, identify that gap and propose platforms and solutions to help lift the local economy, which very much resonated with government, and so tied with Ministry of Labor and so on. So got a lot of support from that top down. In China, same thing, the same idea. We partnered in our China launch with the government initiatives, and this is, today LinkedIn is the only social media that's not shut off, that's actually thriving, and I'll give an example for there later. So the shark. So shark versus crocodile. What do you want to be, the shark of the ocean or the crocodile of the river? So I a little bit paraphrased from a famous quote by Jack Ma. Of course, Alibaba's CEO, who back in 2004 when Taobao competed with eBay was the big shark of the ocean with a big brand name and huge, fans. And Jack Ma was saying at the time, eBay can be the shark of the ocean. We'll be the crocodile of the Yewser River. Okay, so we know our market, we know our customers. We will win because we know our market and our local customers. We will win our domestic market. And this is, of course, what happened within 2 years. By 2006, Taobao had the prominent market share, and eBay had to leave the market. But and I'll talk about it in a second. But if you think about it, there's a saying in Hebrew. Who is Israel from here? Who speaks Hebrew here? We have a few people. There's a saying, "Kol hanechalim zormim layam." Okay, all the rivers, flow to the ocean. This kind of ties a little bit to what I mentioned at the beginning. So, global product strategy is local product strategy on a global scale. Win the local market by understanding the local market, understanding the local customer, their gaps and needs, and what you can do to solve a problem, market by market, river by river, until you win the global oceans. So here's a bit of the Taobao versus eBay, because there are gazillion examples about that, local versus global. But this is a good one, so I'll give that one. So what happened, right? Like eBay was a big, huge company. They how did they lose China market? They came in, everybody knew them. Nobody knew Taobao outside of China at the time. They invested, as you can see, they actually did all the right things in terms of localization. They translated, they localized the copy, but also localized the creative. Very much native look and feel, right? So beyond just like UI translation, they invested $100 million on local operations. They went in really aggressively with huge budgets in local ad campaigns. They partnered with local strategic partnerships, partnered with Sina Weibo for the local portal, for entry point. Right? They did all the right things. So how did the tiny, the tiny crocodile from the Yewser River, how did they win the market? It's very simple. Taobao won, outbeat eBay because Taobao understood Chinese customers. It's really just that. So it's not just about, this is another very common misconception, it's not just about your product or your international customer, user, understanding your product. For that, yes, you translate, you interface, now they understand your product. But it's the second part of that, which is the important part if you want to scale globally, yes, is your product understanding your international market. Right? So what did Taobao understand about the Chinese customers? That eBay simply, did not know enough and did not did not optimize for that customer. So Taobao understood that, first of all, Chinese customers are much more cost sensitive. So they offered simply better and longer pricing terms. So, 14-day listing with an automated option to renew. They offered, eBay didn't have this kind of flexibility. Again, touching again on what I said earlier about enabling on your back end, building a back end that is modular enough so that on the front end you can iterate by geo, by your user IP address, or by language interface or whatnot. Secondly, at the time, like 40% of eBay's listings were auctions, and Taobao, knew that auction was not so habituated in China at the time, so they only allowed for 10% auction in their listings. They did a much more finer slice and dice in terms of the user cohort. So if eBay only categorized users by sellers and buyers, Taobao had more granular, gender-based, sector, industry, and so on, to optimize for many other things. I mean, pricing models like cash on delivery. Of course, China is a mobile-first region at that time, 2004. Only 300 million users in China actually were. Not only 300 million Chinese users had smartphones, and only 90 million at the time had internet connectivity, were internet users. And so Taobao understood that they actually they built a feature for instant messaging and for voice messages on mobile phone between buyers and sellers. Again, eBay did not iterate fast enough to do that. And then things on the UX side, if you can see at the top, quick links, quick search links. Again, Taobao was really optimizing and doing a lot of A/B testing, constant handle on the pulse of the Chinese customer. And quick search links was just, a small feature to enable that really moved the needle in terms of engagement. So when I was at LinkedIn, China and India and MENA were top target markets. We'd identify those top markets to optimize for. And of course, China, was going to be a very big challenge. And looking at the eBay example, we know, and this is true today, right? I mean, both governments and customers and consumers in China prioritize local brands, right? So that's the thing that you need to work with. So that's always gives you a disadvantage as a company that comes from the outside. But our approach for China was a little bit of a cannibalism approach. Okay, we said, well, if anyone's gonna compete with China or compete with LinkedIn, copy LinkedIn, it was gonna be LinkedIn. All right. So we looked at all the factors again in terms of adapting to the market and to the customer in the market. So China is mobile first. So we went with a lightweight, off-stack, native mobile app that is, in terms of value proposition, laser pointed to a single value proposition. Okay, what is a single value proposition? First of all, identifying who are we optimizing for? What is the addressable segment for us in China? China is age cohort is much younger for the professional and student addressable segment for LinkedIn. So it's the 17 to 24-year-olds. Whereas for LinkedIn in Germany, it was the more career ladders because the age cohort is much older. It's more the 30 to 45-year-old that we optimized for. So we built the off-stack lightweight app for career, for internship, and for entry-level and internship job seekers. Really, that was it, for the young professionals of China. Okay, that's in terms of the value prop. Remember those 3 points at the beginning. So the value, the tools, in this case, it's the device, so it's a mobile app. And now the skills, the features. right? So you can see it's a native look and feel. UI UX is very. It was actually built a team in China, and it looks very much native. APIs with the local ecosystem, so the entry points, WeChat integration in address book import upfront, right? So already we're tapping and leveraging the platforms and where everyone has all their contacts anyway. Sina Weibo, Tencent QQ in terms of the social signals for comment, share, and so on. And the last piece that we did, which very, very few companies actually will be willing to, is we were very humble about our brand, right? So we didn't go all out, hey, this is LinkedIn, love us, that brand bond, right? We actually called it Chitu. Of course, it's powered by the LinkedIn data. It's a very powerful app, but very few people actually today, even in China, know that it's LinkedIn, right? And this particular app is what makes LinkedIn sustainable, not just sustainable, yes, not just survive, but thrive, right, in China. So sometimes you need kind of, ambitious goals, and that doesn't necessarily have to be at the very beginning of your early stage startup, but think big from the beginning in terms of enable that. You might not turn it on, for 5 years, but when you are ready to turn on multi-geo and think about global scale, be able to do it, right? Give your child, give your product the skills, the tools, the values to be able to scale quickly. So these are some of the points I've talked about. I'm not going to repeat, but it's definitely first of all, identifying the target markets. Doesn't have to be US first, right? The value proposition for those target markets. Who are you going to optimize for in those target markets, right? Laser focus on the addressable segment for you to prioritize for, to optimize for, and then go ahead and do the product geo fit. Yes. So all those special things beyond language support that you need to do on the product experience for behavior, that ties more to the sort of the cross-cultural. What is the expected behavior of your customers in the market? And then global from get-go. Some of the things you can do upfront so that you're able to scale. Things like discoverability and in terms of the platform, and I'll touch on that in a second. So I'm not going to go into that just yet. All right, how are we doing with time? No, what? Okay, I'm going to. Okay, really? Wow, that's fast. All right. At SurveyMonkey, I prioritized in 2016 Germany and UK, and we did a lot of great things for them. I'm not going to talk about it because I want to show you other things. Again, age cohort looks different in different countries. It's very interesting, but anybody knows today? You can see here that by 2030, 25% in West Europe are going to be over 65. That's a factor to think about your addressable segment, right? There is a country today, not in 2030, today that is more than that in terms of their older age cohort. Which is that country? That's right. So today, 27% of the population are over 65. And it's predicted to be over 40% of the population by 2050, right? So that's incredible. Think about that. Okay, we talked about broadband, about site speed. Again, in terms of usability, I had a chat earlier on with Celine. Celine, she's out there somewhere, building products for women. In the fintech space, so and they're prioritizing for the millennials, so for the up to 24, so for the 17 to 24-year-olds. Today in Japan, in terms of volumes, the highest. Japan is a huge country for monetization opportunity and for expenditure. I don't know if you know, but I just have to say that quickly. So. Companies that don't consider or that leave Japan out of their global rollout, don't consider Japan in their global product rollout, really leave a lot of money on the table. And yes, it does require some adjustments, but think about it, okay? It's a huge market for growth in terms of monetization opportunity. So even just to give you an example, in 2014, we're looking at, Japan, because it's very, it's a more homogeneous society. A lot of online shopping, but primarily only 32% of Japanese online shoppers actually purchase from sites outside of Japan. But in 2014, as an example, in terms of expenditure, $1.7 billion of online shopping from Japan was handled in was done on US websites, and over $1 billion, $250 million on Chinese websites. And those factors combined, so over $2 billion, represented only 3% of Japan's total annual expenditure, online expenditure, just that year, right? So think about the incredible digital opportunity there. I would love to talk so much more about Japan. I've been doing a lot of Japan product strategy recently, but I think we're running out of time. And I want to get to some other principles later on. So I'll be more than happy to answer more questions about that later. Of course, it's mobile first, so you're going to have to do a lot of mobile first optimizations for them. The expected behavior is quite different. Building triggers for users to take the action designed for the page. A lot of what Nireyal talks about in product behaviorism, adding in the geo factor to all those other user type factors is critical to win the markets. And of course, trust. This is true. Actually, it's interesting. Japan and Germany are countries in terms of cross-cultural that are very similar in terms of the expected user behavior. So, in Germany, customers are very, very sensitive about data privacy and so trust and transparency. In Japan, customers, will read your terms and conditions and all your FAQs, so translate them all. They will read the About Us page. They will do the due diligence. It's a very, detail-oriented culture, and it's actually very customary in Japan to pay for corporate testimonials, right? To have local social proof and local top-down, corporates that are respected and have market penetration to actually testify and validate the trust of your product. It's critical. And then global payments, that's a whole other thing. But again, even if you're English only, the last thing you want to do is miraculously, here you are, you just started, you're basically, barely anyone knows your brand, but someone, you have customers that actually know you and love you and want to pay you. The last thing you want to do is have involuntary churn in checkout to complete orders. That's suicide, that's horrible. And many companies, many companies have that because they don't allow global payments. And there's a lot of factors going into global payments, from enabling the right payment processors and building retry and of course, the local payment methods and all of that stuff. Lots of good stuff, regulatory compliance and all that stuff. But if you don't build that, then you're going to just lose off the bat. You're going to churn a lot of paid customers. Alrighty, so, okay, we've touched on that. Again, we don't want involuntary churn. Here are just a quick, do I have time to show a quick A/B test? 5 minutes. Perfect. Alrighty, so here are some very interesting things. Again, just to give you a little taste. So I've been doing a lot of A/B testing for international, and just by having, so think about it, like a non-English new market is a late adopter, yes, because they know you later or don't know you at all, and by default there are lower engagers, right? So a lot of efforts you have to do for those markets, and this is what I did, for Germany actually, for SurveyMonkey, is top of funnel improvements. You really want to optimize for just discoverability and top of funnel onboarding, logged out pages, and so on. So just to get quality, engaged new signups, really that's the core lift, success metric lift that you're optimizing for. So what I did for discoverability in Germany is we did three things. We first of all did the ccTLD, so the domain treatment, .de versus subdomains, de.servermonkey. So the .de, the ccTLD treatment, along with SEO refresh, and with doing the sitemap. So sitemap with producing a dynamic sitemap, and that's something you can do multilingual, multi-geo, yes, upfront for all markets and all languages. So a multi-site, dynamic multi-site with reflag. This is critical. Those three enablements gave us this shot of traffic, in terms of traffic and ranking. So basically with the dynamic sitemap with reflag, what you're doing is you're indicating to the local search engines that, hey, this is not a duplicate page, even though it looks similar, right? It can even be just the English page, but your English page for US and your English page for Australia or UK or Canada, you're indicating in the metadata of the XML file to the local search engine that crawls your page, indicating to them that this is intended for different users. And so it's not ranked as a duplicate, and it's not, and you're also, of course, if you are providing local content, you are showing the right page to the right customer, and that, of course, gives you higher equity in engagement and conversion to paid. So this is the lift we had, 782% lift in traffic from the local search engines. This is the lift we got also on the .co.uk for GB, for Great Britain. And then just some quick examples. So, like I told you earlier, Japan expected behavior is trust, transparency. I tested something that, if I did it for US market, I didn't even have to test it for US market. Of course, it would have failed terribly. This is suicide. Introducing, doing this, right? Introducing explicit checkboxes. The first one is mandatory in order to sign up. The second one is optional. Before sign up CTA. This is suicidal. Okay, I wouldn't have needed to test it in the US, but I tested it in Germany. And of course we did. We had each of these links, terms, privacy, terms, conditions. It goes to a separate page. Everything is very clean and tidy and really tailored for Germany. Very accessible, very transparent. Everything is out there. Here it is. Here's what you're signing up for. And of course, that with other optimizations like the creative and again, Germany is a late adopter, lower engager. Why would they sign up? So we tried different CTA copies. Instead of sign up, try it for free. That seems less committing. All those different optimizations, and finally also adding the being compliant with trusted shops, which is having the trust seal, trusted shops in your footer, was a huge deal for DACH countries. Huge deal, because that already indicates to them that this is a trusted and reliable, compliant website. Those things brought these lifts, which are tremendous. Typically when you A/B test, you get maybe 2% lift. That's amazing. Everybody opens all the champagnes. These kind of successes are pretty drastic. And you can see, not only did we not did we not fail on new signups, actually gained lift in 10% new signups, but also downstream impact on engagement. So deploying of a survey, which is a big thing. The second deploy of a survey we call it the end page, is when more people will just take a survey versus create and deploy a survey, yes. And even if English is not their native language, they will see, there will be a respondent to an English survey. And then we would just serve them this ugly page, that had no value in it. So I tested different options for different countries on optimized end page, so that we can actually create a viral loop and bring them back to the ecosystem, have them sign up, not just sign up, deploy it, right? Sign up, engage, deploy, and get into our ecosystem. So produced, tried different iterations, produced value prop, data sets and so on, and that brought us a huge lift on engaged new signups, again, quality new signups, which was the success matrix for Germany. Similar things for UK, and then we tested things for rest of world, non-English, different variations. With UK we did, because it's English, we did local content. So actually producing, enabling content that is very tied to local current events and relevant for England at the time, to engage them better and to make it more relevant for them, right? Social proof. This is a logged out homepage. Again, from this logged out homepage, which is not very, compelling, to a homepage that has, again, this is for Germany, so local social proof, right? Make it relevant for locals. So having local companies, local brands as customers, because they know of the product list, having more explicit details of what it is. Why should I sign up? Why should I engage? Why should I, upgrade to your premium? And of course, the rotating social quotes from social customers. A big thing that we did in UK is big ask. Again, for UK, because it's a mature market, I don't finish there. We did more around brand trust, so versus brand awareness, so establishing retention. All right, totally skipping and all the way to the final takeaways. User first versus US first. Okay, be local to win global, and global from get-go. Avoid involuntary churn at any cost. All right.
Thank you so much, Talia. That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, another round of applause to Talia. So, our next session is going to start at 2:30 sharp, but before that, I want to invite you to take a group photo with all of us right over here, and Zeke is going to take a group photo, so please join me, everyone, over here. We're going to